alternate 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is being driven by nuclear power. Take advantage of this economic and technological boom to secure your place as the most successful industrialist in Nucleum. Thank you for joining us at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. Nucleum is an action selection game for 1 to 4 players. It takes about 1 to 2.5 hours to play. It's designed by Simone Luciani and David Turksey and published by Board and Dice. They gave us this prototype to look at.
Since this is a prototype, we won't be focusing on the components, but more on the gameplay. We want to share with you our experiences, our likes, and some critiques. Nucleum is going to be released at Essen Spiel in October, but I believe pre-orders are already up on their website.
The game comes with a main game board, sideboard, player boards, tiles, wooden components, and a whole lot more.
So here's a super quick overview of the game structure. On your turn, you have 3 main options. You can either play an action tile to your player board, and that will give you 2 actions. Or you could play an action tile to the main board as a railway link. If you match colors, you get to take the matched actions on your tile.
Instead of those 2 things, you could do a recharge action, which is like refreshing. You gain income based on your tracks and get back your action tiles that you played on your player board. You also put out a milestone star based on the achievements you've earned.
But on most of your turns, you'll be using action tiles. They do a number of things, including allow you to place buildings, mines, and turbines, let you purchase more action tiles, give you contracts, which are personal goals to fulfill, or they let you energize.
Energizing is what you are building up for in the game. It lets you transport uranium and coal to the buildings you've built to flip them to the energized side, giving you immediate benefits and also some endgame points.
So where you and the other players place your pieces on the map has a direct impact on what you can transport where, and even where you can build buildings. So there can be some competition on the map for certain spaces.
This is a complex game, so there's a lot more going on. But you can get a rules overview somewhere else. We want to take some time to go over our experiences, our likes, and some critiques.
So we've played this at 2 players and at 4 players, and the gameplay is tight. You often don't have enough resources to do everything you want to do. And as you're planning things out to do everything in the right order, someone else can swoop in and build in a spot you need or use the coal to make it more expensive.
I think that happened to your last time we played, right?
Oh yes, I had this perfect turn planned that would let me energize a building to get some more achievement tokens and bump up my income before I recharged for the next round. It was going to be awesome. But then Jonah got a special bonus from his technology track, which let him build a turbine anywhere on the board. It didn't need to be connected to his network. He chose the one spot I needed. With that spot blocked, I couldn't build a turbine, and that turbine was going to give me a discount on coal, and without that discount, I didn't have enough money to transport coal to energize my building.
And you didn't get the boost before you had to recharge and collect income again.
I know.
But you were able to do it the next turn, basically.
Well, it was after I did a refresh, so I missed out on all that stuff during that refresh.
Well, there was one game where I bought quite a few tiles. Those action tiles, so I could decide if I wanted to use them on my personal player board or use them out on the main board to start working on tracks. And Jonah...
Jonah.
Well, he did a really good job. He didn't really get any of my spots, but he did a really good job laying out those tracks. So he was getting some of those extra actions when people like connected to his line. And I think that just really feels good, like experience-wise, when someone like connects to your tiles. As long as you have the ability to actually take the action on the tile.
Oh, right. Because if it's like energized and you don't have it, then you just kind of lose that.
But for most part, you can sort of see that happening and you sort of can prepare yourself for that.
Plan for it, yeah. So let's move on and talk about the things that we liked about Nucleum.
All right. So the first thing I like is the asymmetric technology tracks. So there's an A, B, C, and D. And they all have some similarities, but they are asymmetric in that they sort of lead you in certain directions. And I really, really like that. Not only that they're asymmetric, but is there 8 to 10 different ones on the technology track? So you can even choose which ones you want to go after. I mean, I know it's easier to do the level 1s than level 2, level 3s, but I think Ben, who was the other player that was playing with us, he went after those level 3s almost right away because he was trying to build big things. So I like that in the game.
Yeah.
Lots of variability.
Yeah, I like games that have variability, either in the setup or things, and I think those technology boards do add a lot of choices and variability to the game.
And they really sort of ramp up your gameplay because they give those one-time benefits, which Jonah used for that example. But there's also ongoing benefits, which was really, it just feels nice when you have that ongoing, oh, I have that discount or I have that thing that lets me do the awesome stuff.
Yeah, so I like the action tiles. They're, like Kevin mentioned, there are so many and their combinations are going to be different. So it's...
And some are better than others.
Definitely. In our last game, I was looking at the actions that I had played, and I went, oh, I chose poor tiles. Because a bunch of them gave me one action, and then the other benefit was a star or something like that. So I wasn't doing as much on my turn as the other players because I wasn't actually getting 2 real actions with those tiles.
I think Jonah might have had one to let him energize twice or something when he played, if he played it on his player board, and some of them give him a discount or give him extra electricity to that. So
it seemed like he was doing a ton on his turn.
But there are ones that just give you extra resources, which is nice sometimes, but sometimes you want to actually do those actions, which lets you progress in the game. So getting the right action tiles are really key, I think.
Yeah, so I just had a little too much of one type and I needed to diversify a little bit more.
To give you a little breathing room is that the uranium and the people, you can sort of trade them in for, I think the uranium gives you a person, and then I think people give you income, or give you a money. So you could I really need to do this one thing. I know you probably didn't have a person available, but in that example, it's I actually did. I was oh, I just need one more coin to do the thing I really want to do. And I was oh, I have a person. I was planning on doing something else with him, but I really want to do this other thing, so I can use the person to get me that coin that I needed. The other thing I like about Nucleum are the income tracks. You can get more people, you can get more money, and some points too, depending on where you are. I like that you can't spam it. So I'm just going to keep recharging because I have my stuff all the way at the top. There's a game sort of rule where you have to have your action tiles, where you have your action tiles at is sort of how far you can actually get the people, the money, and the points. So if you've only taken 2 action tiles on your player board, then you're not getting a lot of stuff when you do the recharge action. But if you've gone further up and you've been able to progress on those tracks, then you can get a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I agree that that's a nice balancing mechanism. So it's not oh, I'm just going to run my tracks up and keep doing that. I like that in the game, you basically have 2 main choices on your turn of either playing the action tile for the actions or putting it onto the board for a railway. Now, you do have to have a person to do that. So sometimes you want to do that and you're oh, I need to go get some people first. But yeah, always make sure you have what you need to do what you want to do. Obviously, the third choice is doing that refresh, but that's only going to happen a few times during the game. And with those 2 main choices, there are still a lot of decisions to make and how to chain them together in the best way to get what you need to then be able to be efficient with your actions.
Yeah, and then there's lots of ways of getting points, right?
I love point salads. There are quite a few ways to get points. I wouldn't say that this one is a point salad, but it's not just do this one thing. There are player goals that you can get throughout the game, the contracts that are going to give you ways to get points.
We mentioned the income boards. All 3 of those tracks actually give you points if you can get them up far enough.
And then the stars, the achievements that you're doing during the game, getting up that track is going to also give you points. So there's a lot of things you can do.
The other thing is actually building the buildings.
True.
Not only building buildings, but when you energize them, I think that's the other thing I really like about the game are the buildings themselves, because on your player board you have 3 sort of main kinds of buildings that you're putting out onto the main board. Hopefully energize them to get you those points. But I like that they all sort of focus on something. So you're like, oh, this one's going to help me get more people. These kinds are going to help me get more money, and these are going to help me get more technology.
Yes, unlocking those technologies.
And Ben, we mentioned him before, he went and tried to upgrade those bottom, or build the bottom buildings really soon, just to try it out. And he did pretty good. I don't think he won, but he was able to just sort of focus on that and help them get those bigger technologies. And I think it really did help. It was an interesting strategy. I just found it interesting.
Yeah, instead of starting small and building up.
Building up. But I like that there's those different focuses. So
I appreciate that the game does have player aids and that they have the icons on them, and kind of, it was a big help when we were doing the teach to be able for the players to look at some of the things on those and have the reminder for what they are.
Why don't we move from our likes to our dislikes or critiques? I would say dislikes, but maybe just more critiques.
So this first one is a personal dislike for me. I'm not saying that this is a game flaw.
Okay.
And it's that the end game is triggered when a certain number of conditions are met. So the length of the game is uncertain. It's based on what the players do. And because of that, it can be difficult to pace your gameplay. You might not have enough turns to play the long game.
I totally had, like, the last game we played, I had the long game. Like, the game
You had it planned out.
I had it planned out. I needed at least 5 more rounds to do really well. Well, I was already doing well in the game, but the game sort of like, oh, I see the end's about to trigger. I had, like, 15 people, and I had money, and I was like, game's over. I have 1 more turn. Can't use them all.
Yeah, I will say it's nice that you finish out the current round of turns and then you play 1 more. So you have a little bit of time, but not a lot if you've already...
I saw the writing on the walls, like, oh, I'm already working the strategy. I'm just going to keep going down the road. But I saw people's like, oh, that's going to be in it. Like, it's like you have to meet like 3 criteria in order to end the game. There's like 6 different things, like end game triggers. And you have to meet all 3 of them in order to do it. And I was like, oh, that's about to, and that, and that.
It's
coming.
Yeah, so I personally tend to do better in games where I know when it's going to end, if there's a certain set number of rounds or turns.
And I will be honest, I'm usually the one that tries to end.
You usually try to rush.
That's one of the in-game triggers. I'm going to do that, and that, and that. But this time, I was like, I just really want to try this other strategy. It was fun. It was really enjoyable, but I didn't do as well because of that. Another critique is that you really can't know what everyone else is doing. Especially in a 4-player game, there's a lot going on. And sometimes you're just really focused on your own player board. I mean, you need to be in order to, do what you want to do. So you're not really able to pay attention to what other players are doing.
So I would say that even though it is hard to keep track of what everyone else is doing, there's still a good bit of interaction on the main board. Like, I can look and see that you're trying to connect your network, or that a railway in this certain spot will give you access to the coal or uranium. And I can probably guess what a few of your next moves will be. And of course, there's the competition aspect for the spaces on the board, Jonah, and for the common scoring goals. So I would say the game does not take that direct interaction, but I think it is maybe more interactive than some Euros.
You're denying people spots and things like that. So it can definitely also, this game can be prone to some analysis paralysis, otherwise known as AP.
I may have been guilty of that in this game, because I do have trouble thinking several turns ahead. Like, I can usually know what I need to do this turn or the next turn, but being able to plan out those 4 or 5 turns, especially when some of the board state may change, that is a little bit more difficult for me. And I'm usually in the rule book on other people's turns answering questions.
Yeah, go on about that, because we are dealing with a prototype here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that there were a few spots in the rules that I wish had been clearer. Now, this is a prototype, so the rule book might still be going under some adjustments. But we do have one friend who likes to argue the nuances of rules.
Sure. Yeah.
And a few of the rules, I think, could be open to some different interpretations. I was able to go on BGG and find the official rulings, but we did notice that there was one rule that we had interpreted incorrectly in that game.
That's true.
It's still playable. It makes sense, but there were a few things that I wish were cleared up.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving to some of our final thoughts about the game.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, Board and Dice, they do really well on a lot of their like strategy games, and this fits in with like the strategy game line. I know it's not a tea game, it's not Teotihuacan, it's not Taiwan Tensuyu. It is definitely a heavier game. Although we were talking to someone at Board and Dice, and they're like, this is one of the heaviest ones. I was like, I'm thinking now that we've played it, I'm like, not really. I mean, heavy-wise, yeah, there's a lot going on, but we mentioned it before, there's only really 2 things you're going to do. Are you going to play my action to this? And there's not a lot of actions. It's not like I have...
I think it's more heavier in that to do well, you really have to make use of your actions efficiently and that tightness of the economy. So maybe it's not as much in what do I do, but how do I excel?
Sure, yeah, you might not be able to do... If you've played this game and someone else is coming on new, you're going to do much better than them, most likely. There's just, you understand how things work in the game, how to build those networks, where you want to be on the board, what buildings you want to build, all that. Because there is a lot to think about. But, I mean, overall, I think it actually makes sense. And that's what I like about this game, Nucleum, is like, oh, I know what to do in the game. I might not do amazing at it, but I mean, I'm going to do the buildings and I'm going to create routes and I'm going to energize those buildings. So I think it makes logical sense. And I don't think it's hard to understand that personally.
So I enjoy a lot of the games Board and Dice publishes. Some of my favorites fall in the medium plus complexity range, like Tekhenu, Teotihuacan, and Barcelona.
Ah, yes, Barcelona, right back there.
Kind of like what Kevin was saying, Nucleum to me feels a bit heavier than those. Maybe not super heavy, but I would put it on the same level as maybe Taiwan Tensuyu and Trismegistus.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree.
You definitely need to plan, but also be flexible.
Yes, and we'll see. You have to be flexible.
Yes, I know. And I actually personally struggle some in network delivery type games like Brass, this one is kind of resembles.
It definitely has some like similarities to Brass, and I think Barrage is another one.
So I would say because of that, Nucleum doesn't fit my preferred playstyle. So it's not going to be one of my favorite games.
2023?
Probably not, but...
That might be mine.
Yeah, it probably fits Kevin's playstyle a little bit better than mine. But I would say I still enjoyed the puzzle and the challenge of using the action tiles, of upgrading the technologies, trying to achieve a lot of those scoring goals. So I definitely still play this game if asked, but it's not gonna displace some of those other games for me.
Okay. It hits a lot of my like things I like about games. I like the route building. I like the energizing that you're doing in the game. The building of things. I enjoy all that and it feels good. I think I mentioned this before. It just feels good when you're like, oh, I'm doing this thing and I actually get to do it, and upgrading things to make your player board more powerful, and getting lots of different kinds of points.
Yeah, so. There's definitely some chaining going on in there. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments, what's your favorite Board and Dice game?
Or industrialized theme game, like Brass or Barrage.